Hello, art parents! Welcome back to Art Literacy. I'm really excited for this year, and I thought it would be fun to kick this year off with Joan Miro. He is such a fun painter, and it's fun for the kids to kind of see that abstract, Dada Surrealist style, and kind of just see the excitement and fun of that. So we'll get started with him. I just want to remind you, as far as the biography is concerned, not to get too caught up in the details. The older kids are going to be kind of interested. The younger kids, you really just want to give a few facts. And more than anything, we just want to humanize the artists and help them kind of see these people as people instead of just names. It'll help them, relate a little bit more. So Joan Miro was born in Barcelona, Spain, on April 20th, 1893. And I would say really even just, say something along the lines of your grandparents were, maybe about the same age as Miro, or maybe even your great-grandparents, actually. Yikes, that makes me feel old. All right, so Miro he loved art as a young boy, but he wasn't super talented in the way that we often think. He wasn't like Picasso, who was a contemporary of Miro. So he loved art and he practiced and he started lessons at age 7, but he wasn't necessarily super gifted. And his dad really didn't want him to become an artist. He was a very strict man, a watchmaker and a goldsmith. He really wanted him to be a businessman. They were kind of middle class, and he wanted him to, move up and be secure in life. But his mother was very loving and kind of evened out his dad's harshness and encouraged him to keep going with art. So he continued to take art lessons all through his childhood and his youth, but he also went to school and became a clerk when he was a young man. And he was so miserable. He just wanted to do art. That's what he loved. That's what he lived for. That he ended up having a nervous breakdown and becoming very sick. And his father kind of saw, he could either have a son that was sick and unhappy, or he could support a son doing a profession that he wasn't really nuts about. And so he bought this farm kind of in there, kind of out of Barcelona a little bit in a village. And they moved to this farm, and Miro began to really paint, and he was so happy. And this is a picture of that farm. This is kind of his early work. You really can't see it very well in here. But you can see, even though it's very representational, you can clearly see, you can see it, the buildings look like the buildings of the farm, which, man, everything in Europe is so gorgeous, right? But even still, it's laid out in a very non-traditional way. And that's kind of what I would point out to the kids, is you can see that even though it is realistic to an extent, it has an abstract feel to it. He's definitely more interested in telling the story of the farm than portraying perfectly what the farm looks like. And then as he goes on in his career, he becomes more and more abstract. But each of his paintings, he really was trying to tell a story. And a lot of his work is very politically motivated. He was super against the fascist government of Spain, which you can imagine made for a really difficult life for Miro, because they don't, fascist governments aren't very open to criticism. So he had kind of a tough go with things, but he was also commercially successful in his lifetime, even though he really wasn't interested in that. And as he got older, that's when he started burning canvases and walking across canvases. And it was kind of a little bit to him, he was so against that, that really stiff and snooty art scene that, we do it just so, and it is this way, and that's how we go. And he just really, he really honestly railed against that, and believed that everybody should have a chance. And I think part of that maybe comes from not being a child prodigy, not, having it just come naturally to him. He wanted everybody to have a chance. But you can see in his work, even though we won't really talk with the kids a whole ton about, about political ideals and how that plays in, you can see that his work definitely has a very definite style. There's a story there. And what I love to ask the kids is, what do you think that story is? What is this painting saying to you? Do you think this is happy? Or do you think it's sad? What does this make you feel? What do you think Miro was feeling when he painted this? What was he trying to say? It's really fun to hear their responses. And I love to just emphasize, when you do that, emphasize there's no right answer. I mean, Miro did have a message in mind, but the beautiful thing about art is it's in the eye of the beholder, right? So we can interpret this to be whatever it means to us. And that's one thing that he loved. He kind of said he likes his art to be a pinch or a slap or a poke, and to really, you know, draw a response from the viewer. And you know, if it's a good response, great. And if it's a bad response, if they hate it and they passionately hate it, then that's great too. And that's kind of a fun thing. That was definitely, this is all new to this movement, these post-impressionists that really were getting out there and trying new things, and it's, you know, all these new thoughts going on. I just love that. I love this time period around the turn of the century, from the 1800s into the 1900s. There are just so many exciting things going on in art, and that's really fun. Up until then, up until the Impressionists, just remind the kids, you know, really for the most part, art was very representational. That's how we knew art was good, was because it looked like what it was supposed to look like. And now we're doing these things that are just creative and crazy, and the art isn't meant to look like anything, and that's really fun and exciting. This is from the Blue Triptych. That's what he's probably most famous for, these 3 giant paintings that are just very abstract. But you can see, even though this is very abstract and it's like a line and dots, if you show the kids, I mean, look in the fields of, you know, in the field of blue behind, you can see brushwork. There's a definite, this isn't something just anybody can do, you know, you've got to have the vision to do it, number one, but also there is a technique and there is thought behind it. Which I love about abstract art, and that is something that is sometimes hard for people who aren't art lovers to grasp. So I think that's a great thing to encourage the kids to see now. Miro was part of the Surrealist movement, which meant that they wanted their paintings to be really dreamlike. There was a lot of symbolism, really heavy symbolism. And so a lot of those artists had certain things that they said, this represents women and motherhood and the beginning of mankind, and this represents the inner thoughts that we keep to ourselves. So that was a common thing with the Surrealists. Miro was known for being just a really nice person. He was soft-spoken, very quiet, very kind. He had a lot of grandkids that he loved, and it's kind of fun. If you look on YouTube and look for him, there are tons of biographies where they talk about, where his grandkids talk about him and their time they spent at his farm, and at his kind of, I'm trying to think what you, like his villa in, his villas in Spain. So later in life, he moved to Mallorca, which is on the coast, kind of a resort area, and that is actually where he did the bulk of his work. He did the bulk of his work as an older man. So I included a picture of him older. Isn't he adorable? All right. So for our project, and that's really all the time you need to spend on a biography with the kids. We really don't want to, like I say, we don't want to bog them down in the details. Just give them kind of an idea of who Joan Miro was. Give them a chance to just kind of see him as a person, and then move on to the project. We don't want to spend too long, and I know I get caught up in that sometimes. Like I say, last year Mrs. Strong gave me an hour and a half because we just get talking. So when we get to the project, what we're going to have the kids do is start out with just, you know, their blank piece of paper, and just go ahead and take your pencil and just make some curves and, you know, whatever you want. And then I love to have them close their eyes and just, you know, make some lines, but sometimes that gets a little chaotic. So if you don't feel like it'll be a good fit for your class, just say, hey, just make a big squiggly line around on your paper. And now look at it and see what kind of comes to you. See what you kind of see in there. What can you add in there to make it a picture? And remind them that abstract art doesn't have to be a picture of a thing. So it's not like they have to look at this and say, oh, there's a bird, I'll make that into a bird. No, they just look at it and go, oh, it's kind of fun. Here I just added some, I don't know, just crazy random stuff. I actually turned it both ways. So there's a little bit of stuff that's going portrait direction. There's a little bit of stuff that's going landscape direction. Which way does it go? I don't know. It's so crazy. So take the markers, fill in details as much as they want, and maybe just point out to them. Some of Miro's paintings were very detailed and have tons and tons of stuff in them. Some of his paintings were very, very simple. Whatever you feel like you want to do, that's great. And then after they've got their stuff in with markers, they can just take the watercolors and pick a few places to add in a wash. Maybe they want to, I don't know, maybe we want to make this part right here. Oh, we want that brush a little bit more wet. And I always remind the kids, especially with watercolors, that brushes are very thirsty. So especially with watercolors, we're going to need to dip that brush in plenty of water, and tell them, you know, experiment just a little bit and see, you know, if you have a lot of water, it's going to be really light. If you have less water, it's going to be darker. Maybe kind of experiment with that and see what you can make and what's interesting. The fun thing about this is that there really are no right answers. That is the great thing about surrealist art, is it's just kind of crazy and dreamlike, and just have fun with it. Don't get all caught up in, you know, my portrait doesn't look like me, or, you know, whatever tends to happen with those cute kids. I hate that we ruin them that way. So this is the project for the month. It's kind of crazy. Miro was kind of a crazy guy. I love in his later work, he really experimented a ton. And, you know, honestly, a lot of his work, I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I would not hang that in my house. But it's really cool that he was out there and experimenting and trying new things. Even to the point of setting canvases on fire to burn a big hole down the center, and then putting it out and painting around that. That's awesome. That's super cool. So let me know if you have any questions. I'm always here to give you guys a hand with whatever I can. You guys are wonderful to be here, and you're going to have such a fun year. Thanks so much.